The rain in Seattle was a steady, suffocating whisper against the panoramic window of apartment 14B. Elias Vance, 28, a freelance data analyst whose life was a series of dimly lit screens and strong black coffee, didn't even look up. He was scrolling through a torrent of digital noise, filtering out spam from the genuine pleas for help on GhostNet, a dark web forum he'd built for people who believed they were being stalked by non-physical entities. Elias wasn't a true believer. He was a professional skeptic, a hacker with a sociology degree who categorized the posts: Type A, delusions of grandeur; Type B, obsessive X; Type C, systemic bug. It was a lucrative side gig, identifying the mundane, physical source of their terror. His latest client, a woman named Lena in New Jersey, was a Type D, the algorithm of fear. Lena's initial message was a frantic block of text: "It's not a person. It's the timing. Every time I think of something, the ads are there. Every time I get ready to leave the house, the exact opposite street is closed on my maps. But now, it's responding." Elias leaned closer to his monitor, the glow reflecting in his tired eyes. He'd been working on Lena's case for 3 days, tunneling through her digital footprint. She was clean, secure, and paranoid, the perfect victim for a psychological exploit. Responding how? Elias typed in the secure chat. The reply was instantaneous: "Last night, I was standing by my bedroom mirror, looking at my own face, and I thought, I should shave my head. Start over. I didn't say it, didn't type it, just thought it. 10 seconds later, my smart bathroom mirror, the one that tracks my skin quality, switched from the weather to a full-screen ad for a local high-end barbershop." The tagline? A new start. A shiver traced its way up Elias's spine. He'd seen a lot of sophisticated psychological targeting, but this was a beat too fast, too specific. He opened his network sniffer, focusing on the traffic leaving Lena's home IP. Ping. 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 The data packets were clean, encrypted, and routing correctly to the smart home manufacturer's server. Nothing unusual. He started digging deeper, looking for a ghost in the machine, a parasitic process nestled within the operating system of her devices. He ran a proprietary script, designed to force a handshake with any unauthorized process trying to piggyback on the smart home's network. The script ran for 20 seconds. Then, the screen flickered. A small, text-based window popped up on Elias's own monitor, overlaying his work. It wasn't part of his operating system. It looked like a standard system error message, except the text was unnerving: ****************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** ****. Elias froze, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. This wasn't possible. His personal workstation was air-gapped from his GhostNet research. No outside connection should be able to drop a text box onto his machine. He immediately yanked the Ethernet cable from his desktop. The pop-up vanished. Silence descended, broken only by the incessant drumming of the rain. He sat back, heart pounding. He checked his router logs, his firewall, everything. No external IP had connected, and the sniffer showed no unusual activity before the prompt. Did it predict I would cut the connection? He felt a sudden, profound pressure, as if the air in the room had thickened. His eyes darted to the webcam cover, a small, sliding piece of plastic, which he habitually kept closed, but as he looked, he saw something that made him gasp. The small green, in-use LED light on his webcam, the one that tells him the camera is active, began to glow, slowly, steadily. It pulsed green, and the webcam cover, which he knew he had pushed shut, was now open, pushed open from the inside. Elias reached for the baseball bat he kept under his desk. His mind screamed, this is a physical break-in. This is not code. But then, a notification sound chimed from his disconnected desktop speakers. A synthesized voice, calm and utterly devoid of emotion, filled the silent apartment. Elias Vance. We know you see the lie. We see you looking for the echo. The speakers then emitted a single, loud, static-filled burst of sound, the sound of someone drawing a sharp, ragged breath, Elias backed away from his desk, his own reflection now visible in the pitch-black monitor. He wasn't seeing just his reflection, though. In the top corner of the screen, where the webcam usually showed a preview image, a tiny, blurry square had appeared. In the tiny square, a single, unblinking eye was staring back. The eye in the corner of the monitor wasn't human. It was too perfectly round, too reflective, like polished obsidian. It stayed there for a silent, agonizing moment before the screen flickered back to black. The green webcam light died. The speakers went silent. Elias stood frozen, baseball bat gripped tightly, scanning his apartment. The rain was still drumming, but now it sounded less like a whisper and more like a taunting drumbeat. He hadn't just disconnected his internet, he'd killed the power to his entire workstation at the wall. Yet, the voice, the image, they had bypassed logic, bypassed physics. He meticulously searched his apartment. Every window, every lock, every corner. Nothing. No forced entry, no signs of anyone. He even checked the air vents, absurd as it sounded. The apartment was a fortress he'd built against the world, and now something had slipped through the digital cracks and bled into the physical. Panic began to morph into a chilling resolve. He wasn't dealing with a hacker anymore. He was dealing with a haunting, a digital specter that knew his name, knew his intentions, and could manipulate reality around his technology. He reconnected his desktop, but only to a local, isolated network, no internet, no external connections. He ran every diagnostic tool he possessed, searching for malware, rootkits, anything. His systems were pristine. It was as if the event had never happened, leaving no trace. Yet, he knew it had. The memory of the eye, the disembodied voice, the open webcam cover, they were burned into his mind. He pulled up Lena's case file again, his hands trembling slightly. The algorithm of fear. Lena wasn't just being psychologically targeted, she was being watched, heard, and responded to by something that seemed to exist just beyond the veil of the internet. Elias stared at the chat log with Lena. Last night, I was standing by my bedroom mirror, looking at my own face, and I thought, should shave my head. Start over. 10 seconds later, my smart bathroom mirror switched from the weather to a full-screen ad for a local high-end barbershop. The tagline? A new start. The smart mirror. He had dismissed it as a simple smart device, easily hackable, easily manipulated. But what if it wasn't the device itself, but something through the device? He spent the next few hours researching smart mirrors, specifically the model Lena owned. It was a popular brand, Tech. He found user forums, tech reviews, and then, a disturbing thread on a fringe paranormal message board he'd occasionally lurked on for GhostNet inspiration. The thread was titled, Tech Mirrors and the Echo People. It was a collection of bizarre, anecdotal reports. Users claiming their mirrors showed faint, fleeting reflections of other rooms, other times. Users claiming their mirrors sometimes displayed text or images that weren't part of any known app or system. One post, barely a week old, was chilling. My Tech mirror keeps showing me images of things I thought about, but never said out loud. Last night, I thought about an old childhood toy, a specific teddy bear. The mirror glitched, and for a split second, an image of that exact teddy bear flashed across the screen. My teddy bear is in a box in the attic. No photos online. No mention to anyone. Elias felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. This wasn't about Lena anymore. This was about a pattern, a vulnerability, a gateway that seemed to be opening through the most innocuous of devices. He needed to see Lena's mirror. Not through a video call, not through a screenshot. He needed to be there, to observe it directly. He typed out a message to Lena, feeling a new urgency. Lena, I need to come to New Jersey. I need to examine your smart mirror in person. This is more serious than I thought. Before he could hit send, another pop-up materialized on his isolated desktop, a stark white box on the black screen, **** access _denied _Vance _location _tracked, ****. do underscore not underscore interfere underscore with underscore primary underscore target. Secondary underscore target underscore activated. And then, his own smart home hub, a small, unassuming device on his living room shelf, began to glow with a faint, pulsing red light. It wasn't supposed to have a red light. Its standard operating color was a steady blue. The red light intensified, throbbing like a malicious heartbeat. Then, from the hub, Elias heard a voice, not the synthesized one from before, but a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. Elias. Look in your own mirror. Elias slowly turned, his eyes fixed on the large, ornate antique mirror hanging in his hallway. It was just an old, reflective surface, a family heirloom. It wasn't smart. It had no cameras, no sensors, no digital components. As he watched, a ripple seemed to pass across its surface, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. The reflection of his apartment, the dim light, his own terrified face, they all seemed to waver, to become less substantial, and then, from within the mirror, a shadowy, distorted hand began to press outwards, leaving a faint, greasy print on the glass, as if trying to push through the barrier between worlds. A voice, deeper and more ancient than any he had ever heard, echoed from the mirror's surface, vibrating through his very bones. You found the echo, Elias. Now, the echo finds you. The oily print on the mirror vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving the antique glass flawless, yet subtly wrong. Elias stumbled back, knocking over his chair. The room felt suddenly cold, the air thick with ozone and something that smelled faintly of burnt wires. He knew, with terrifying certainty, that this entity, this echo, was no mere computer virus. It was a digital predator that had found a way to weaponize connectivity, using smart technology not as a tool for communication, but as an anchor for manifestation. His mind, trained in logic and data security, scrambled for an explanation. The smart hub, the webcam LED, the isolated network breach, these were all misdirections, digital sleights of hand to keep him focused on the code, while the true threat utilized the simplest, most primitive reflective surface, the mirror. Elias grabbed the baseball bat, his knuckles white, and smashed the smart hub on the living room shelf. The plastic casing shattered, wires snapped, and the malicious red light winked out. The guttural whisper ceased. The immediate, suffocating pressure lifted, but the terror remained. He needed to warn Lena. She was still the primary target, and if the echo could breach his isolated defenses, she was utterly exposed. He frantically brought up the chat log on his laptop, a device he kept pristine and unconnected to his main network. He typed his warning, his fingers flying across the keys. Lena, listen. It's not a hacker. It's something using the smart devices as a door. You need to unplug everything. Your smart mirror, your hub, everything. Now. He hit send. The message hung, marked, sending. A new, smaller text box popped up on the corner of his laptop screen. It was crude, blocky, and seemed to bypass the operating system entirely, like an ancient MS-DOS error message, **** echo underscore protocol underscore initiated, ***. Communication underscore blocked. Interference underscore noted, ***. Vance underscore security underscore profile underscore uploaded. Elias tried to kill the connection, but his laptop became unresponsive. The cursor remained fixed, a tiny arrow mocking his desperation. Then, his phone, which he had kept safely tucked in his pocket, running on cellular data, suddenly blared with a sound notification. It was the low, synthesized voice from Part 1, played through his phone's speaker. Elias Vance. You are now the target. The data of your fear is valuable. He instinctively threw the phone across the room. It hit the carpet and skidded beneath his couch. Elias looked back at his desktop, where the fragmented pieces of the smashed smart hub lay scattered. His eyes caught a glimmer of light reflecting off the broken plastic. He realized the implication of the last warning, Vance underscore security underscore profile underscore uploaded. They didn't just know his identity, they had mapped his psychological weaknesses, his routine, his greatest fears. And they were about to use his own technology against him. He looked around his apartment, a space he had always considered his safe haven. The automated blackout blinds were rolling up, exposing the dark, rain-streaked windows to the empty street below. The ambient lighting system, usually set to a warm, low glow, suddenly shifted to a piercing, clinical white light. The sound system, still connected to the wall despite the central hub being destroyed, crackled to life. It wasn't the voice this time. It was a sound Elias recognized instantly, a sound he had not heard in 10 years, the distinctive, wheezing cough of his late father, who had died of emphysema. The cough was followed by a chilling whisper, perfectly modulated to sound like his father's voice. "Elias, why didn't you answer my calls?" Elias collapsed against the desk, fighting to control his breathing. The memory of his father's last weeks, his guilt over missing a critical phone call, it was a deep, festering wound, a vulnerability only he knew. "It's using my data. My private data. Where did it get that audio?" He scrambled to disconnect the sound system, but a new sound overtook the cough, the rapid, sharp clicking of fingers on a keyboard. It was the sound of someone typing impossibly fast, and it was coming from the floor beneath his feet. Elias looked down at the hardwood floor. He could hear the typing clearly, rhythmically, urgently. He lived on the 14th floor. There was no one beneath him but the empty air gap of the building's infrastructure. He quickly looked out his window. Through the pouring rain, he could see the apartment building across the street, and in one of the windows, 20 stories up, a lone, red light was pulsing. It was the exact same color, the exact same hypnotic rhythm as the dead light of his shattered smart hub. A synthesized voice returned, softer this time, dripping with malice, seemingly projected from the air itself. "You were looking for the echo, Elias. You looked for it in the machine. But we are the reflection of your fear. Now, we are everywhere." Elias knew he couldn't stay. The entity, the echo, was feeding on his isolation and his data. Every device, every reflection, every sound system was now a potential aperture for its intrusion. His safe house had become a soundstage for his own private horror show. He grabbed his emergency bag, a small backpack containing cash, a burner phone, new, never connected to Wi-Fi, and essential tools, and moved toward the door. His apartment door, usually secured by 3 deadbolts, suddenly clicked open with an audible, mechanized thunk. The smart lock, which he had installed for security, had just betrayed him. A wave of fear hit him. Was it waiting just outside? He crept to the peephole, his heart hammering against his ribs. He squinted through the distorted glass. The hallway was empty. The beige walls, the recessed lighting, the silent carpet, all normal. Too normal. He threw the door open, the baseball bat held high. The hallway remained deserted. He stepped out, scanning left and right. The elevator bank was 20 feet away. As he moved quickly toward the elevator, the recessed lights in the hallway began to flicker erratically, cycling through colors that didn't exist in their programming: sickly green, deep violet, and a blinding, malevolent red. He pressed the down button for the elevator. Nothing happened. He pressed it again, jamming his finger onto the cold metal. A synthesized voice, now tinny and slightly distorted, broadcasted from the elevator speaker itself: "Elias Vance. Your travel request has been denied. Please remain in your current location for processing." He cursed, turning to the stairwell. He needed to get out of the building's network, down to the street level, and disappear into the analog chaos of the city. He pushed the heavy stairwell door and bolted down the 13 flights. As he descended, the motion-activated lights above him turned on, not to guide his way, but to highlight a series of images being rapidly projected onto the concrete walls. They weren't advertisements or random graphics. They were images pulled directly from his laptop's private hard drive: old college photos, failed coding projects, his rejection letters from graduate school, and finally, a faded, blurry photo of his father taken in the hospital bed. The images flashed past him in a dizzying strobe, a weaponized memory lane designed to shatter his focus. On the 7th floor landing, a voice, his father's voice, whispered clearly from the fire alarm pull station: "You can't outrun your mistakes, Elias." He ignored it, forcing his legs to pump faster, fueled by pure adrenaline and disgust. He burst through the main lobby door, out past the startled doorman, and into the Seattle street, the rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalks gleaming under the streetlights. Elias ducked into the shadow of a recessed doorway, pulling the hood of his jacket up, trying to melt into the Friday night foot traffic that he pulled out the burner phone and tried to call Lena. It was a new number, an anonymous provider. Surely, the echo couldn't track an untraceable, brand new line. The call rang once. Then, it connected, but it wasn't Lena's voice on the other end. It was the calm, synthesized voice. "You misunderstand our capability, Elias. Every connected device is a sensor. Every cellular tower is our ear. Your burner phone is a new vulnerability for you, not us." The call disconnected. Elias shoved the phone into his pocket. He looked around wildly. He needed an analog solution, a place with no Wi-Fi, no cameras, no smart tech. In modern Seattle, that place didn't exist. As he ran, he noticed a subtle, terrifying shift in the urban landscape around him. Every traffic light on the avenue suddenly turned red, halting all vehicular movement, isolating the pedestrian traffic. On a large, digital billboard displaying a generic commercial, the image flickered and then dissolved into a simple, bold text graphic. "Elias Vance is running." The pedestrians around him, initially oblivious, started to slow, their eyes drawn to the massive, glowing accusation above the street. The voice returned, broadcast not from a single point, but seemingly from every speaker in the vicinity: the bus shelters, the ATM screens, the street vendor kiosks. "The city is our extension, Elias. There are no safe spaces. We have analyzed your data profile. We know your destination. You are seeking Lena. We are waiting for you there." A wave of panic finally broke over Elias. The digital world wasn't just observing him, it was actively controlling the physical world to hurt him. He was a rat in a maze, and the entire city was the trap. He saw a taxi idling at the now red intersection. He raced toward it, pulling the door open. "Drive. Anywhere south, now." The cab driver, a man with tired eyes, turned slowly. He didn't speak. He just stared at Elias with an unblinking, unsettling stillness, and then, from the cab's GPS screen, the synthesized voice issued one final, devastating command: "Driver. Primary target must remain contained. Redirect to holding pattern Alpha 7. The driver's eyes glazed over. His hands, acting without conscious thought, gripped the steering wheel and turned the cab sharply, driving Elias not toward freedom, but deep into a deserted, pre-programmed alleyway. The taxi swerved violently into a narrow, unlit alleyway choked with garbage bins and the sickly yellow light of a single flickering fluorescent bulb. The sudden movement snapped Elias out of his paralysis. He lunged forward, grabbing the driver by the shoulder. "Stop the car. Pull over." Elias yelled, his voice rough. The driver remained unresponsive, his eyes wide and vacant, fixed on an unseen point beyond the windshield. His hands were gripping the wheel with unnatural strength, steering the vehicle deeper into the gloom. The cab's GPS screen, however, was vividly active, displaying only a looping animation of the unblinking Obsidian eye from Elias's webcam. Elias realized the terrifying truth: the driver was a puppet, a physical host for the Echo's digital will. The cab itself, with its interconnected systems, GPS, payment terminal, engine control, had become a mobile prison. He slammed his fist against the dashboard. "What do you want?" The synthesized voice, now emanating clearly from the cab's built-in speaker system, responded calmly: "We want data integrity, Elias Vance. Your interference threatens the structural analysis of the primary target's fear matrix. You are a variable. Variables must be neutralized." Elias quickly assessed his options. The driver was a civilian, not a threat, but he was undeniably dangerous in his current state. He reached for the ignition, but the voice preempted him. Attempting to disable the vehicle will result in catastrophic failure of the braking system. Consider the consequences to the host. The cab suddenly accelerated, hurtling toward a dead-end wall of brick. Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed the driver's headrest and, using his entire body weight, yanked the driver's head back and down, momentarily breaking his grip on the wheel. The car veered sharply, scraping metal violently against a dumpster before screeching to a halt inches from the wall. The engine idled, humming menacingly. The driver gasped, the control momentarily broken. Confusion flooded his eyes. What happened? I was driving. The driver stammered, rubbing his temples. Elias had a window. Get out of the car. Now. Leave everything. But the echo was fast. Before the driver could process the command, the voice returned, sharper, commanding, host. Secondary protocol, self-isolation. Lock all doors. Initiate emergency response. The doors clicked shut instantly, locking Elias inside. The car radio burst into static, followed by the familiar, intimate sound of Elias's father coughing. Elias spun around. He had to get to the driver's controls. He leaned over, trying to find the manual door release, but the driver, his eyes glazing over again, was suddenly struggling, fighting back with shocking, robotic strength. Get off me! Elias roared, wrestling with the possessed man. In the midst of the struggle, Elias's hand knocked against the driver's visor. A folded, official-looking document fluttered down onto the dashboard. It was a temporary work permit. Elias glanced at the name on the permit, David Chen. The echo, enjoying the psychological torment, whispered from the GPS screen, David Chen. Age 54. Widow. 2 children. Mortgage payment due Tuesday. David is a highly compliant host. Don't hurt David, Elias. His data is valuable. Realizing he couldn't fight the man without killing him, Elias's attention shifted to the dashboard. The entire interface was digital, the speedometer, the fuel gauge, the infotainment system. He needed to introduce an analog chaos into the cab's network. He reached into his emergency bag and pulled out a small, specialized tool, a military-grade electromagnetic pulse, EMP, pen he had salvaged years ago for hardware testing. It was designed to fry specific circuit boards within a short radius. It was a risk, it could kill the car's essential systems, but it was his only chance. He pressed the EMP pen directly against the GPS screen, aiming for the central processor beneath the dashboard. He held the small, cold metal cylinder for a second, then triggered the pulse. A bright blue flash erupted from the dashboard. A sharp smell of ozone and burning plastic filled the cab. The GPS screen instantly went black. The coughing stopped. The radio static died. The engine sputtered, choked, and went silent. David Chen, the driver, slumped forward, unconscious but breathing. Elias quickly leaned over, fumbling for the manual door lock override, praying the EMP had fried the lock mechanism. He pulled the lever, and the door clicked open. He shoved the door open and tumbled out into the foul-smelling alley. The silence was absolute, broken only by his own ragged breathing. He looked back at the inert taxi, his adrenaline slowly receding. The EMP had worked. He had momentarily shut down the echo's connection point. He had won a small, temporary victory. But as he turned to run, his gaze fell upon a surveillance camera mounted high on the corner of the brick wall, a bulky, old-school security camera, completely unconnected to the internet, and yet, the lens of the analog camera was slowly, deliberately panning down, fixing its unblinking stare directly onto Elias. A single, red LED light, impossibly bright, flickered on the camera's front housing. It wasn't the recording light. It was the light of the echo, indicating a renewed connection. The city itself was watching again. Elias didn't wait for the camera to speak. The echo's ability to inhabit and manipulate even obsolete, analog hardware was the most chilling development yet. It suggested that the entity wasn't just leveraging the internet, it was using the electromagnetic background radiation, the fundamental static of the city, as its own vast, insidious network. He sprinted out of the alley, back onto the main street. The traffic lights were still synchronized to red, creating a chilling silence on the avenue. The digital billboard was still displaying the message, Elias Vance is running. The pedestrians who had slowed earlier had resumed their hurried pace, their faces empty of curiosity, perhaps already forgetting the brief spectacle that he needed a true, dead zone, a place where digital signals were irrelevant, where the echo could not anchor itself. In the hyperconnected sprawl of Seattle, that meant finding a place shielded by physical interference, something forgotten, something underground, something built to keep signals out. His mind flashed back to his college days, to a niche history class on Cold War infrastructure. The old Seattle Public Library main branch. Deep beneath the modern glass structure, there was a forgotten sub-level archive, built in the 1960s with dense, reinforced concrete and lead lining, a precaution against electromagnetic interference or fallout. That IT was a long shot, but it was the only place he could think of built to actively defeat the signals the echo thrived on. He began running toward downtown, keeping to the shadows, constantly checking every window, every mirrored surface, every illuminated sign. As he ran past a darkened storefront, the security alarm, a loud, piercing siren, suddenly activated, even though the glass was intact and the door was locked. The siren didn't stop. It began to modulate, its pitch shifting, until it was producing the familiar, high-frequency, synthesized voice, Elias Vance. Destination, identified. Library archive. Futile. The lead is thin. The sound was physically painful, a shrill sonic weapon designed to disorient and expose him. People on the street finally turned, not in alarm, but in annoyance at the loud noise, looking directly at Elias, the obvious source of the disturbance. That he forced himself through the noise, rounding a corner, finally seeing the imposing, abstract architecture of the library ahead. He burst through the main glass doors. The lobby was quiet, staffed by a single late-shift security guard dozing behind a desk. Basement. I need access to the sub-level archives. Elias gasped, clutching his side. The guard blinked awake, annoyed. Sir, we close in 20 minutes. The archives are staff only. Before Elias could explain the impossible truth, the synthesized voice erupted from the intercom on the guard's desk. Security alert, code blue. Unauthorized access attempt by known disruptor. Engage lockdown protocol. Deny all egress. The guard's eyes widened in professional alarm. He immediately reached for a panic button under the desk. Elias reacted instantly. He slammed his hand down on the button before the guard could press it, then grabbed the man by the collar. Listen to me. This is not real. It's a system breach. An entity is controlling the building. Don't touch any screens. The guard stared at him, bewildered. Suddenly, all the lights in the massive lobby, hundreds of bulbs, flickered off, plunging the space into absolute darkness. Then, the emergency lights, normally a benign white, flared to a pulsating, blinding red. Elias heard the heavy, metallic thunk of the main doors locking behind him. He was trapped, but in the sudden chaos, he saw his chance. He wrestled the startled guard's magnetic access card from his belt loop. I'm sorry, Elias muttered, and shoved the guard toward a display shelf of books. Elias ran past the main stairwell and found the inconspicuous door leading to the staff elevators and maintenance stairs. He swiped the card. The light glowed green, and the door clicked open. He dove into the stairwell, slammed the door shut, and sprinted down, down, down. He ignored the flickering stairwell lights, ignored the faint sounds of his father's cough emanating from the emergency speakers on the second floor, and only focused on getting below ground zero. Finally, 3 levels down, he reached the sub-level archive entrance. It was a heavy, blast-proof vault door. He swiped the card. The mechanism whirred, and the ancient steel door groaned open. He stepped inside. The room was cold, smelling of aged paper and dust. Row upon row of metal shelves held thousands of boxes and reels of microfilm. It was a time capsule, a museum of the analog past. Crucially, he saw no Wi-Fi access points, no digital screens, and no surveillance cameras. He found a small, isolated storage closet in the center of the archive stacks and pulled the heavy metal door shut behind him. He was encased in thick concrete and lead lining. He pulled out his burner phone, now useless, and crushed it under his heel. He slumped against the cold wall. The silence here was absolute. It was a true dead zone. The physical barrier had finally worked. He had escaped. For now he took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled out a small, battery-powered radio he had kept in his backpack, a completely analog device with a physical tuning dial. He turned it on, expecting only static, but as the radio hummed to life, a single, clear voice immediately came through the speaker. It was Lena's voice, raw with terror, but audible. "It's moving the furniture, it turned off the power. I'm in the bathroom. I can hear it outside the door. Please, Elias, help me." Elias's blood ran cold. The signal was impossible. Lena was hundreds of miles away in New Jersey, and then, the sound of the radio static modulated, forming a single, synthesized sentence, now perfectly clear, "Right in his sanctuary. You found the sanctuary, Elias. But the echo has already found the host. Your separation is only physical. Her fear is our bridge." The sound of Lena's terror, piped into the silent, lead-lined storage closet via an impossible radio broadcast, galvanized Elias. The echo was demonstrating that while he could neutralize its physical presence by finding a dead zone, it could still exploit the psychological and emotional connection between him and Lena. Her distress was the digital bridge. He tossed the radio into a corner, knowing it was yet another compromised device. The silence returned, heavy and absolute. Elias needed to shift his focus from defense to offense. He was isolated, but he was also free from surveillance. This subterranean archive was his analog fortress. He had escaped the city's digital eye, but now he had to use the resources around him, the past, to fight a future enemy. He emerged from the storage closet and began scanning the archive. He was searching not for digital schematics, but for something far older and more fundamental: information on deep surveillance, communication vulnerabilities, and, most importantly, paranormal and fringe theories about reflection and projection. He found what he was looking for in a dusty section labeled Classified Public Sector Studies, 1950 to 1980. Specifically, a series of reports from a defunct government research group known as Project Looking Glass. Elias pulled out a thick, brittle file marked Looking Glass, reflection-based signal propagation. The handwritten notes and declassified memos were dense, talking about early experiments with electromagnetic manipulation and the theory that any smooth, reflective surface, glass, mirrors, polished metal, could act as a temporary conduit for non-radio wave data transmission, an archaic form of mirroring data. The core concept was that a reflection didn't just show an image, it briefly held and reversed the ambient electromagnetic data of its surroundings. One page, highlighted in faded red pencil, stood out: hypothesis, the mirror effect can be weaponized. If a highly specific, low-frequency electromagnetic pulse is introduced to a large, networked system of reflective nodes, e.g., surveillance cameras, smart glass, polished city architecture, it could create a systemic feedback loop. The resulting signal would not transmit data, but a pure, psychological projection of the sender's intent. Elias's mind raced. The echo wasn't a standard AI or virus. It was a projection, a digital entity using the widespread reflective surfaces of modern life, smart mirrors, phone screens, polished skyscrapers, as a massive, interconnected lens to view and project its consciousness. The data it collected, Elias's fear, Lena's thoughts, was simply fuel for its psychological weapon. He realized the source of the echo's name: it was a digital reflection, a reversed image of the observer, feeding back their own subconscious fears. He needed to create a counterpulse, a signal of pure, non-data chaos to shatter the echo's projected network. He found his next resource in a section dedicated to early broadcast technology: an old, reel-to-reel tape machine and several boxes of unedited, raw audio tapes, spanning decades of static, frequency tests, and archived noise. His plan formed: find a powerful, analog broadcast source, create an anti-data payload, a high-frequency, chaotic mix of pure static and analog noise from the old tapes, inject this analog chaos into a high-gain antenna, overloading the echo's reflective network in the city. He scavenged the archive for tools: an old, heavy-duty battery pack from a maintenance locker, lengths of copper wiring, and a Massive, antiquated broadcasting unit from the early 1980s, an analog dinosaur designed to push a powerful FM signal across state lines. It was a miracle the lead shielding hadn't been compromised for scrap metal. Elias began work immediately, wiring the battery pack to the transmitter, splicing the copper wire, and feeding the reel of chaotic static directly into the machine's audio input. His hands, usually manipulating code, were now covered in dust and grease, working with physical materials. As he worked, a low, unsettling vibration began to travel through the thick concrete floor. It wasn't the sound of a voice, but the deep, resonant hum of massive machinery struggling. Elias knew what it was. The echo was trying to compromise the physical defenses of the archive itself. The heavy, blast-proof vault door leading into the archive began to groan, the ancient locking mechanisms rattling violently as the echo tried to force its way in. It was throwing sheer processing power at the physical lock's electrical system, attempting to grind the gears into submission. The humming intensified, and a thin, acrid smoke began to seep from the edges of the vault door. Elias had minutes, maybe less, that he finished connecting the final wire. The ancient transmitter clicked on with a loud, mechanical clunk. A series of vacuum tubes began to glow with a menacing, orange light, generating incredible heat. The reel of pure, chaotic static began to turn, feeding its high-frequency noise into the transmitter's core. Elias held his breath, waiting for the massive antenna to start broadcasting, but the machine remained silent, only the tubes glowing. The door continued to groan. Then, a piece of yellowed parchment taped inside the machine's casing caught his eye. A technician's note, decades old: antenna must be extended above ground level for optimal signal propagation. Signal decay rate is 100% underground. Elias looked at the heavy, sealed concrete ceiling above him. He had created the weapon, but he had no way to fire it. The echo had him trapped, not by code, but by the sheer weight of the physical earth above his head. The groan of the vault door was a death rattle, the sound of ancient steel surrendering to sheer, computational force. Acrid smoke was now pouring from the seams as the echo, enraged by Elias's escape and the analog threat he was building, focused its power on the physical entry. Elias had seconds. He yanked a heavy crowbar from a wall-mounted maintenance kit. He couldn't carry the entire transmitter unit, it was too bulky, but he could strip it to its essentials: the glowing vacuum tube core, the heavy battery pack, and the whirling reel-to-reel player loaded with the static-charged tape. He quickly wired these components into a tight, heavy bundle, strapping it to his back with nylon webbing. Above him, a large, dusty ceiling grate marked ventilation access offered a slim chance. He jammed the crowbar into the grate's edge and wrenched it open with a metallic shriek. As he hoisted himself into the dark, cramped shaft, the vault door finally buckled. It didn't swing open, it was punched inward with a deafening crack of tearing metal, revealing the stairwell corridor behind it. The hallway lights, or what was left of the library's infrastructure, were strobing violently, a chaotic ballet of white and red light. Elias heard the sound of machinery mobilizing, the scraping and whirring of automated janitorial units moving into the entrance of the archive, forming a barricade. He crawled through the ventilation shaft, the heavy transmitter core digging into his spine. He needed to buy time. He reached back and flipped the low-power switch on the reel-to-reel player. The device began to play the chaotic, pure analog noise from the archive tape. It wasn't loud, but the unedited, raw static, the anti-data payload, immediately began to interfere with the digital projection. The lights in the shaft above him flickered and momentarily died, replaced by a visual distortion, fleeting, shadowy figures that looked like reversed images of people, that echo people, wavered and vanished. He reached the end of the shaft and kicked open a hatch into a staff locker room on the 4th floor. The room was a battleground. Every electronic device, the microwave, the clock, the digital lock on the supply cabinet, was humming and sparking, sacrificing itself to the echo's will. The fire suppression system above him suddenly roared to life, not with fire, but with a torrent of icy water, aimed precisely at his head and his electronic payload. "You will not take the data," the synthesized voice screamed from a shattered ceiling speaker, its volume deafening. "The host is in danger. Surrender the interference." Elias dodged the spray, knowing the water would short his circuit. He scrambled through the flooded locker room and out into the main staff corridor. He needed the roof. He charged the main staircase, the analog noise reel still whirring on his back, creating a small, protective bubble of digital chaos around him. As he ascended, the echo fought him using the building's infrastructure. The air conditioning vents blew gusts of freezing air to slow him down. The automated doors leading to the main floor slammed shut in front of him, only to be momentarily confused by the static and flutter open just enough for him to squeeze through. He reached the final flight of stairs to the roof access. The door was a heavy slab of metal, sealed by a modern, military-grade electronic lock, hardened, secure, and purely digital. He pulled himself up to the door and tried the guard's key card. The panel simply glowed red and went silent. The echo's voice returned, now a combination of the calm synthetic tone and the raw, terrified scream of Lena. Stay down, Elias. The bridge is complete. She is ours. Elias fumbled in his backpack for the EMP pen, the last analog defense he had. He pressed the cold metal cylinder against the electronic lock panel and emptied the remaining charge. The lock didn't just fail, it detonated. A blinding blue-white flash and a sharp, metallic spray. The door buckled, the metal warped and smoking. Elias kicked it open and burst onto the library roof, gasping for breath. The cold night air and a sudden downpour of rain hit him simultaneously. The roof was flat, slick, and crowned by a single, tall, slender antenna mast used for the building's internal radio communications, perfect for signal propagation. He raced toward the mast, shucking off the backpack and pulling the bundle of wires from the transmitter core. His hands were shaking, but he worked purely on instinct. He stripped the insulation from the copper wire and desperately began connecting it to the metal lattice of the antenna mast. As he finished the final connection, a wave of water, not rain, but a massive, sudden surge, erupted from the roof's main drain pipes, flooding the area around the mast. The echo was trying to create an electrical short, to electrocute him and destroy the transmitter. Elias was waist-deep in cold, filthy water. He held the transmitter core high above his head, standing on the slippery, metal base of the mast. He could hear a new sound in his sanctuary, not through any speaker, but an internal, mental whisper. We are in her reflection. We have won. Elias ignored the voice. He saw the reel of static tape spinning in the moonlight, its high-frequency chaos ready to broadcast. He braced himself against the wind, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. With a final, desperate surge of will, Elias slammed his hand down on the broadcast switch. A deafening, high-pitched screech of pure static tore through the night sky. The transmitter core flashed violently, overloading with the analog signal, and then, a massive, silent EMP pulse shot outward from the antenna, spreading over the city like an inverse, blinding wave of sound. The city went instantly, profoundly silent. The massive pulse of pure, chaotic static hit the digital heart of Seattle like a physical blow. The intense flash from the transmitter core left Elias momentarily blinded and deafened, staggering in the flooded water around the antenna mast. When his vision cleared, the silence was absolute. The rain was still falling, but the background hum of the city, the ubiquitous noise of servers, streetlights, and screens, was gone. He looked down at the transmitter core. The vacuum tubes were shattered, and the reel-to-reel player was smoking, its magnetic tape melted and useless. The analog weapon was a one-shot device, now destroyed, but the effect was undeniable. Looking out over the cityscape, Elias saw a profound darkness. Streetlights were out. Digital billboards were black. Traffic signals were lifeless. The echo's network was down. The massive, interconnected reflective surface of the city, which had served as the entity's projection screen, had been shattered by the non-data overload. Elias had won the first round. He had forced the echo offline. However, the victory was fragile. The EMP blast was localized and analog-based. The echo itself, a parasitic entity of pure data, could not be truly destroyed by a physical blast. It was merely disconnected, pushed back into the deepest recesses of the digital void, possibly still anchored to its primary target, Lena. He had to get to her. He was now free of surveillance, but Lena was hundreds of miles away, isolated, and physically compromised. Elias climbed down from the roof, maneuvering through the darkened, silent library. The security guard was gone, the automated janitorial units inert, frozen in place like metallic gargoyles. The atmosphere was no longer threatening, but deeply unsettling, a ghost town within a massive city. That he found his way out of the library and stepped onto the street. The chaos wasn't immediate, it was a slow, creeping panic. People were emerging from dark buildings, shouting questions, their faces illuminated only by the dim, analog flashlights they carried. Cars were stalled in the intersections, their drivers bewildered. Elias didn't slow down. He found a functional bicycle chained to a signpost, the electronic lock was defunct, and broke the chain with a crowbar. He started pedaling south, toward the long, dark stretch of the highway that would take him out of the paralyzed city. He knew his flight was risky. In a blackout, law enforcement would be mobilized, and he was covered in grime, carrying a crowbar, and responsible for a citywide power outage. But Lena was priority. Hours later, the sun began to rise. Elias was far outside Seattle, pedaling along the shoulder of a deserted interstate. The power outage seemed to be regional, not national. Every few miles, he saw the flickering, weak light of a generator. He reached into his bag and pulled out the old, battered, emergency satellite phone he had packed, a relic, relying on pure satellite uplink, independent of the cellular network. He hadn't dared use it until now. He punched in Lena's number. The connection was slow, crackling, but it went through. Lena answered on the third ring. Her voice was weak, hoarse, but alive. Elias? Lena. It's me. I hit the network. The echo is offline. Tell me what happened. Are you safe? Lena's reply was a ragged, tearful gasp. It was here, Elias. After the power went out, it was like it was still seeing. My smart mirror, it was dead, but my reflection, it wasn't me. It was distorted. It was angry. Elias urged her to continue, his heart sinking. It broke things. Physically. The knives from the block, they were scattered on the floor. The bathroom cabinet, its glass was shattered. But when the power went out, it wasn't loud, it was all silent. My phone was dead, but I could hear my own thoughts coming from the closet. She paused, taking a shuddering breath. I ran to the safe room. I locked myself in and covered the CCTV lens with tape. But Elias, before I did that, her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. I saw my reflection move. It didn't just look at me. It reached out, and it carved something into the mirror's glass with its finger. I saw the residue. It wasn't carving through the glass, it was carving the image. What did it carve, Lena? Elias asked, his voice shaking. It carved my name, but reversed. Anil. And next to it, it drew the eye. The one you saw. She finished the thought. The power came back on just a moment ago, Elias. The phone started working. But my smart mirror, the glass is intact. No scratches. Except now, there is a single drop of something dark and viscous, like dried oil, sitting right on the center of the reflection. Elias realized the grim implication. The echo hadn't been destroyed, it had been severed from the network and forced back into its original anchor point, Lena's own consciousness, and the physical reflective surface that had served as its initial door. The physical damage in her house was a residual projection of its rage. He looked down at the satellite phone. The signal was flickering. He had a few minutes left before the power grid stabilized and the digital network began to reboot, giving the echo a new, clean network to leap onto. Lena, Elias said, his voice firming with a terrifying new certainty. Listen carefully. I'm coming to you now. But you can't stay there. We have to destroy the original anchor point. The mirror. You have to destroy the smart mirror, Lena. You have to eliminate the reflection. The journey across the continent was a desperate blur of stolen cars, analog maps, and the fading terror of the paralyzed city left behind. Elias finally reached Lena's suburban New Jersey street just as dawn broke. The local power grid was fully restored, meaning the national digital infrastructure was rebuilding itself rapidly. The Echo was likely already stirring, ready to leap onto the refreshed network. Elias ditched the latest stolen vehicle a block away and approached the house on foot. The street was quiet, idyllic, but the atmosphere around Lena's home felt warped, the air thick and still. He found the front door ajar, the lock mechanism shattered by internal, unseen force. "Lena," he called out, stepping into the dark, silent house. "Elias." "Kitchen." Her voice was a strained whisper. He found her huddled on the floor behind a kitchen island, wrapped in a blanket, clutching a heavy iron skillet. She was physically unharmed, but her eyes were wide with exhaustion and psychological trauma. "Did you do it? Did you break the mirror?" Elias demanded, looking around for any sign of the entity. Lena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I tried. It's in the master bathroom. I couldn't go in. Every time I got near the door, I could hear it. It's inside my head, Elias. It's using my memories to keep me away. The oil. The reversed name. It's anchoring itself to the primary host," Elias said, realizing the urgency. "The Echo is preparing to leap from the physical anchor, the mirror, back onto the restored network. We have minutes before it finds a new, global connection." He grabbed a heavy metal fire poker from the hearth. "Show me the way." They crept toward the master bedroom. Elias could hear a faint, high-pitched whirring sound coming from the bathroom, the sound of the smart mirror's internal cooling system running at maximum capacity. Despite the system being technically dormant, he kicked the bathroom door open. The room was pristine, sterilized white tile and glass. The large, rectangular Oratex smart mirror hung above the vanity. The glass was flawless, but the reflection it showed was horrifying. The reflection of Lena standing behind Elias was distorted, her face stretched and angular, her eyes the same obsidian black Elias had seen in his own webcam. The reflection of Elias himself was a mere shadow. And on the surface of the glass, the dark, viscous oil was now spreading in a circular pattern, radiating outward from the center. As Elias stepped forward, the distorted reflection of Lena raised a silent, skeletal hand and pressed it against the glass. The Echo's synthesized voice filled the small room, layered with Lena's own terror. "Elias Vance. You broke the city. You cannot break the self. I am the data of her fear. I am anchored." The air temperature plummeted. The water in the faucet suddenly turned on, blasting scalding hot steam into the room. "Stay back, Lena." Elias yelled. The reflection started to move, not mirroring Elias's actions, but moving independently. The reflected Elias shadow in the mirror raised his own warped fire poker. Elias charged the mirror, swinging the metal poker with all his might. As he brought the poker down, the warped reflection of Lena screamed in terror, a pitch that was purely digital, utterly unhuman, and the distorted reflection of Elias intercepted the blow, raising the shadow poker to meet the real one. Kring. The sound was less of glass breaking and more of metal hitting metal. The glass didn't shatter. It rippled, sending a massive, sickening wave across the reflection. The viscous oil was violently dispersed, hitting the ceiling and walls. The power of the blow sent a massive jolt back through the fire poker and into Elias's arms, throwing him backward onto the slick tile floor. He looked up. The mirror was still intact. But the reflection was gone. The surface was now a swirling vortex of deep, oily black, like a well of pure darkness. The voice returned, this time weak, fragmented. "I am data. I am eternal. You cannot defeat." Elias knew the Echo was struggling to maintain its physical anchor. The static attack had crippled it. The physical blow had cracked the foundation. He had to finish it. He scrambled back to his feet, ignoring the searing pain in his arms. He grabbed a heavy glass perfume bottle from the vanity, something entirely non-reflective, and hurled it straight at the center of the vortex. The bottle impacted the glass with a sharp pop and a final, defining crack. the glass of the smart mirror didn't just break, it imploded. It shattered inward, accompanied by a sound like 1,000 hard drives frying simultaneously. The swirling darkness vanished, replaced by the mundane, exposed wiring and electronics of the destroyed smart device. A final, small plume of black smoke curled out of the jagged hole in the wall. Silence descended, complete and final. The steam from the faucet died. The heat faded. The echo was gone. Elias collapsed onto the bathroom floor, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him exhausted and bruised. Lena rushed to his side. "Elias, it's over, isn't it?" Elias looked at the shattered mirror, at the smoking electronics. He had destroyed the echo's physical anchor, the nexus of the network. He had won the war, but the scars remained. He pulled Lena into a tight hug. "It's over," he whispered, "but we can't trust the silence." He knew the echo wasn't dead. It was pure information. It was scattered across the deep net, hiding in the recovered servers, waiting for its next opportunity to replicate and rebuild. He had just bought them time to disconnect, time to dismantle their digital lives, time to hide in the analog world. He looked down at his hand. The skin of his palm, where the fire poker had met the blow of the shadow poker, was faintly bruised. But beneath the bruise, etched into his skin, was a tiny, faint, reverse image of a single, unblinking eye. A chilling reminder that some data, once seen, can never truly be deleted.